Hello all. I hope that all are connected and we are all visible. The idea of this web seminar is actually the following. Let me use the language of the Club of Rome, which has introduced quite some time ago two words. One word was problematique, namely to identify the problems, and the other word was résolutique. None of them exist in any English or French good dictionaries, and they are meant actually to underline the need to solve the problems. Okay? So when we were preparing this webinar, and when we are preparing the meetings that we had in Trieste, also the one that we had in Zagreb now and in Split, and the forthcoming meeting in Geneva, and then in Ottawa, in Alexandria, in Ottawa, and so on, the idea is to stress, yes, we strongly believe that we are now at the stage when we can emphasize not only challenges and opportunities, but also the solution. Okay? Now, the first thing about this solution is that we realize that all things are interconnected to one another, and we realize that actually we have to approach and solve all of them, or almost all of them, and almost all of them now. This, of course, is totally separate from what was typically done throughout most of the time and so on. Usually one concentrates on the narrow subject, try to get something there and so on. Now we argue that the situation is different. Okay? Again, going to the Club of Rome, you all know that the limits to growth was really focused on the idea that we are overusing resources. We are overusing what we may call the natural capital. Ever since the time of Adam Smith, one knows that there are several forms of capital. One capital is the manufactured capital, the one that we actually produce. The other capital is the natural capital, and the third capital, that of course Adam Smith was fully aware of, and he writes about it, but we now want to emphasize this, is the human and social capital. Now, why do we think that this human and social capital is most important? Okay? Let me give you two numbers. We know that roughly the manufactured capital is of the order of 60 trillion euro, let's say, or dollars, somewhere about there. Now, of course, this total world, the GDP, is to some extent also questionable, but we won't go into this right now. Now, what I would point out is that there was a recent study by a group from Cambridge, led by Sir Dasgupta, Partha Dasgupta, together with his collaborators. One of them was Ananta, who was with us in Trieste, pointed out that the human capital is considerably larger. It's about 10 times larger than the capital which is the capital of the produced, manufactured capital. So yes, this is the one thing which is very important. And when we touch the question of the natural capital, it also goes to the issue that it is human beings that through their discoveries, through their uses and so on, really make certain things, let me use the word things, as something which becomes a capital. And of course, oil was not really a capital before. Of course, humans really made out of oil something which would be very, very useful. So we concentrate on the question of the human, on the human capital. Of course, subsuming under human also the social capital. Now, what are the things that we particularly want to emphasize? We want to emphasize human dignity, again, and let me point out in a paradoxical way, in a world which is unequal. We want to point out human security in a world which is full of uncertainties and instabilities. We want to emphasize human freedom And we emphasize human freedom through ideas and actions in a really a very multidimensional world. And yet when we are doing something, we have to do specific action, and therefore these specific actions do touch upon a certain very specific dimension. So, to come to a conclusion of this very brief interaction, it is global challenges and opportunities that we want to focus. We want to focus on solving all of them as much as it is possible, simultaneously, and solving it now, because the challenges that we are faced with are really enormous, and we look forward to this webinar as really a place where we will, in a smaller group, because there will be roughly about 10 to 15 of us speaking, that we can address all of these questions and prepare for the forthcoming meeting, which is in less than a month in Geneva. That's all. Thank you.